Functions in Go, you can kind of think of them as shortcuts, almost like an easy button for code, in the terms of if you want to do something and you want to do it over and over and over again, or in different areas of your code, the easiest way to do that is to build a function. That way you're not writing out that same code every single time you want to take that step. So in this example on functions, let's go ahead and write this out. We have our func main. So that's our main function that the program starts with. However, up here, we can create functions that we can use in the main program. So think of it this way. Here's where we're building our Legos, and then down here is where we're assembling those Legos into, whatever that Lego builds out. So in this example, we're going to call this plus, this function, and inside we're creating a couple variables, A and B, and we're basically just saying all we want is to take it and we want to return A plus B, which is essentially adding these two together. Then our other function in our example is plus plus, which love these names, but hey, for simplicity's sake, let's just follow this. We're doing integers again because we're just going to do maths. And this time we're doing a return of A plus B plus C. So we create two functions, two code blocks essentially that we could call on. And all we're doing is we're saying it's a bunch of integers. We're doing it in two different ways. We could say each one is an integer, or we could say each one is an integer by only saying it's an integer once. So essentially we could also write this like that. It's not a big deal, but in the example they have us doing both. So let's go ahead and use these functions. Let's see how that's done. In our example, we're creating a variable and we're saying plus, and we're calling 1 and 2. Now, what's interesting about this is when we call plus, we're calling this function right here into this variable. And we're passing two arguments, just like we're saying here, it's got to be two numbers. This could be two whole numbers of whatever we want, right? In our example, they're just doing 1 and 2, but it can be whatever whole numbers. This cannot be floating points. In other words, it cannot be decimal points because we're just doing integers. But any whole number works. Once we do that, then we can call on this, and we're basically saying 1 plus 2, which is what we've got here, equals, and then res. Now, this is a very simplistic way of saying what we're doing here. Now, obviously, normally with functions, we're doing something a lot more complex, but this gets the idea across. Likewise, if we do res down here, and actually I'm going to change this. I'm going to make this res 2 plus plus, and we're doing 1, 2, 3. Where we're passing all three integers, just like we defined up here. And we're doing a print line. And we're doing 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals res 2. All right, now if we save this and we run it, let's see what happens. There we go. So here we've got 1 plus 2 equals 3, 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. So it's literally just taking these functions that we built, we're passing these arguments, because we're defining the arguments up here. We can have whatever numbers we want, as long as they're whole numbers, because this is integer, and our entire function is to do nothing but add these numbers together and give us the sum. So by calling the function, giving it its numbers, because that's what it's calling for here, we can simply just print it. Now, we don't have to actually type any of this part out. We're just doing that for the example. We could just have it like this. Let me go ahead and save it and run it, and you can see what I mean. And there it is. So just keep in mind how functions work is it's code blocks that you want to reuse, and it simplifies your code by putting your code up here in functions, a job that you want to do, especially if you want to call it several times over. It's easier just to go ahead and define that function at the top before you get to the main, and then calling that function later on in your code wherever you need it and however many times you need it. All right, well, let's talk next about returning multiple values.